The silence of space stretched endlessly, broken only by the faint hum of an alien ship gliding through the darkness. Its long, curved hull shimmered with pale lights, like a ghost swimming across the void. The crew inside the vessel worked quietly, their eyes fixed on screens and sensors, searching the empty regions between dying stars for anything unusual. 4 days, they had found nothing. Only silence. Only emptiness. But then, a sharp signal flickered across their scanners. A pulse, faint but clear, echoing from the shadows of a dead star that hung lifeless and broken in the distance. The crew shifted nervously. Something was out there. Something massive. The alien captain leaned forward, his deep eyes narrowing as he studied the readings. The object was enormous, larger than any ship they had ever recorded. It floated silently near the corpse of the star, its shadow cutting across the dust clouds like a blade. No heat signatures. No active transmissions. Just cold, silent metal. At first, they thought it was a derelict. A relic left to drift for centuries. Perhaps an old mining station, or a forgotten carrier lost in war long ago. But the shape was wrong. The more the scanners revealed, the stranger it became. Its angles were sharp, its design brutal, nothing like the flowing vessels the aliens knew. It looked like it had been carved for war, not peace. The younger officers whispered in unease. "What kind of ship is that?" one asked. The captain did not answer. His eyes stayed on the silhouette that now appeared across the main screen. The structure was immense, a floating city of metal and fire scars. Its hull was thick, reinforced far beyond reason. Weapons, if they were weapons, jutted from its sides like the teeth of some ancient predator. For a moment, no one spoke. They all felt the same quiet dread. Then one officer muttered the thought that none of them wanted to say aloud. "What if it is human?" The room fell silent. Even the hum of the ship seemed to fade away. The word hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Humans. The one species the galaxy had whispered about in fear. Legend said they were dangerous, their technology brutal and merciless. Many races believed humans were long gone, or hidden far from the center of the galaxy. But if this was their creation, then perhaps those legends were not only true, they were worse than anyone had imagined. The captain broke the silence with a command. "Scan it." The ship scanners reached out, beams of invisible light sweeping across the drifting colossus. Data flooded in. Strange metals, strange alloys, dense layers of armor stacked on armor. The readings were confusing, full of contradictions. It was too advanced, yet too primitive at the same time. Too powerful to be left abandoned, too silent to be alive. The officers frowned as the information appeared. The ship was built to endure destruction. Layer after layer of plating meant it could take punishment no sane species would expect to survive. The weapons detected were oversized, massive cannons that looked capable of tearing moons apart. There were missile silos, energy turrets, railguns that stretched the length of entire cities. "Why would anyone build this?" one alien whispered. The captain's face darkened. Because they were afraid of nothing. Still, there was no life detected. No crew moving inside. No voices, no heat, no trace of air systems. And yet, the scanners kept picking up faint, impossible readings. Energy signatures buried deep within the ship. Something hidden. Something alive, or something pretending to be alive. The crew's unease grew heavier with each passing minute. The silence of the ship felt wrong. Ships were never this quiet. Even derelicts carried echoes, frozen bodies, leaking energy, fragments of distress calls. But this vessel was perfectly still. Too still. As if it was waiting. The captain ordered another scan. This time, the beams reached deeper, past the outer hull, into the heart of the warship. What they saw made the blood drain from their faces. Inside, there were chambers the size of cities. Caverns filled with machinery that twisted like the bones of some great beast. And at the very center was something no one could explain, an energy core that glowed with a pulse, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. "It's alive," whispered the science officer. His voice trembled. The captain snapped at him. "No. It cannot be alive. It is a machine." But even he did not believe his own words. The readings pulsed again, slow, steady, patient. Like something sleeping. The younger crew members began to panic. Some begged to leave, to turn back before it was too late. But curiosity gripped the captain. Curiosity and fear. If this was human technology, it was knowledge too dangerous to ignore. If humans had built a ship like this once, they might have built more. And if those ships were waiting, hidden across the stars, then every alien world was in danger. He ordered the scans to continue. The beams swept deeper. Strange codes lit up across their screens, signals they could not decode, patterns repeating in strange sequences. They looked like warnings. Or traps. One officer swore he saw the ship shift. Just a flicker, just a trick of the scanner. But for an instant, it seemed as if the giant hull had moved. As if it had twitched in its endless sleep. The crew fell into silence again. Each of them stared at the vast shadow hanging in space, and each of them felt the same cold thought: this was not a ship. This was something else. Something built for war without mercy, built to destroy without pause. The captain whispered to himself, though the words echoed across the bridge. The warship looked asleep, but was it really? Outside, the massive vessel floated on, its engines cold, its guns silent, its vast body glowing faintly against the dead star. But deep within, past the armor and shadows, past the endless layers of steel and fire, something stirred. Something was listening. The alien vessel drifted closer, its crew silent, their hearts pounding as the scanners dug deeper into the mountain of metal floating in the void. The giant warship remained still, turning slowly in the faint pull of the dead star's gravity. Every flicker on the screen seemed to grow heavier, every line of data stranger than the last. The captain ordered the scans to sweep across the hull again. Bright pulses of invisible light crawled over the metal surface, echoing back impossible readings. The armor was thicker than anything they had ever seen, layered with alloys that resisted even the most advanced sensors. The surface carried scars, burns from weapons they could not identify, yet the damage had not pierced more than a fraction of its skin. One of the younger officers frowned at the data. It shouldn't be floating. A ship this size, with this weight, it should have collapsed under its own mass. The science officer shook his head. The metals are unknown. Some bend like liquid, others harder than stone. This ship was not built with normal laws. Whoever made it, they ignored limits. The crew shifted uneasily. They were explorers, researchers, not soldiers. And yet here they were, scanning something that looked less like a ship and more like a weapon carved into the shape of a world. The scanners slid deeper, peeling away the layers one by one. Beneath the outer armor, they found weapon chambers. Endless rows of them. Cannons that ran the length of entire cities. Launch bays that could release swarms of missiles in a single breath. Strange energy turrets that pulsed with faint echoes, as if even after all this time they still remembered war. The bridge grew colder. No one spoke. They were looking at power beyond their understanding, a design that spoke only one word: domination. The captain's voice finally broke the silence. Record everything. Every detail. This knowledge may be the most dangerous thing we have ever found. The scans continued. Inside the hull, the ship was not hollow like theirs. It was dense, filled with overlapping systems, hidden compartments, and endless corridors that twisted like a labyrinth. There were no signs of crew quarters. No farms, no gardens, no living spaces. This was not a home. It was not meant to carry families or travelers. It was meant for one thing: war. The science officer whispered, "It is a city of weapons. Nothing else." The readings grew stranger as they pushed further. They found massive power conduits running like veins through the walls, energy flowing faintly through them even though the ship looked dead. There were multiple power cores, each the size of a mountain. If one failed, another would awaken. If the crew died, the ship could still fight. One officer trembled as he read the screen. "Captain, I think this ship was designed to survive forever." The captain narrowed his eyes. His thoughts were darker. He was beginning to see the shape of the truth. This was no accident, no relic left behind. This was a message. A warning. The ship around them creaked as it drew closer, as if the very silence pressed against their ears. The scans pulsed again, each sweep bringing back more impossible results. Radiation levels that made no sense. Heat signatures that flickered and vanished before they could be pinned down. And always, at the center, that faint steady pulse, slow as a heartbeat, echoing like something sleeping in the dark. The crew tried to convince themselves it was only a reactor. Only a machine. But none of them believed it. The rhythm was too perfect, too alive. The captain spoke softly, though every word carried weight. We are not looking at a ship. We are looking at a beast in a cage of metal. As the scans deepened, strange signals began to bleed through the data. Fragments of code. Patterns that looked like language but twisted into forms no one could understand. Symbols repeated, layered, almost as if someone, or something, was answering the scans. The science officer's hands shook as he tried to block the feedback. It's responding to us. I don't know how, but it knows we are watching. The bridge went still. Every eye turned to the great shadow outside the window, the warship floating like a sleeping predator in the endless dark. And though the scanners showed no movement, though no engines fired, though no weapons turned, every soul on the alien vessel felt the same rising dread. The warship was not dead. It was waiting. The scanners hummed softly as they pushed deeper into the colossal body of the warship. The alien crew watched in silence, their screens glowing with lines of shifting data. Each new layer revealed something darker, something more unnatural. At first, they thought the outside had been terrifying enough, but what lay inside was far worse. The first clear images appeared, rows of weapon systems buried beneath the outer hull. Gigantic cannons stretched across entire decks, some so large that the alien officers struggled to imagine what kind of ammunition they fired. Their readings showed energy charges far beyond anything their people could produce, energy that could vaporize fleets in seconds. One of the younger officers leaned back, his voice trembling. These guns, they're too big. No ship needs weapons this size. Not for defense. The captain said nothing, his face locked in a grim expression. His eyes traced the glowing outlines of missile silos, hundreds of them, buried deep in the ship's spine. Each one carried warheads the scanners could not fully identify. Some burned with traces of fusion energy, others carried strange signatures that did not match any known science. They built weapons we cannot even name, the science officer whispered. His hands shook as he wrote the readings down, though his voice was full of fear, not curiosity. The scans revealed more. Railguns that stretched along the ship's length, designed to hurl projectiles faster than light itself. Energy beams that left behind echoes on the scanners, as if they still remembered the destruction they once unleashed. There were entire decks filled only with machines of war, no food storage, no healing bays, no signs of comfort or rest. The ship had no place for the weak. It had no place for peace. The younger crew members exchanged frightened glances. The silence in the bridge grew thick, heavy, like a weight pressing down on their chests. Each weapon they uncovered told the same truth. This was not a vessel built to defend a world, or even to conquer one. This was a weapon made to unmake civilizations. One officer finally broke the silence. Why? Why would humans need this? Who were they planning to fight? The question hung in the air like poison. None of them had the answer, but every one of them was thinking the same thing. If humans had enemies that demanded such a warship, then those enemies must have been monsters. And if they didn't, if this ship had been built not for defense, but for attack, then humanity itself was the monster. The captain spoke at last, his voice low and heavy. They were not planning for a war. They were planning to win it before it began. The words froze the bridge. The officers turned back to their screens, to the endless rows of weaponry buried inside the metal giant. None of them could deny it now. This ship was not made for survival. It was made for domination. The scanners pulsed again, reaching even deeper into the structure. For a moment, the readings blurred, as though the ship resisted the scan. Then, slowly, new chambers came into view, dark halls, hidden compartments, rooms filled with machines whose purpose the aliens could not understand. But in every corner, behind every wall, there was one unshakable truth. Wherever they looked, they found more weapons, more destruction, more power than any single race should ever hold. The crew began to whisper among themselves. Some wanted to stop the scan, to turn away before they uncovered something worse. Others argued to continue, to learn everything before it was too late. Fear battled curiosity in their hearts, but one thing united them all. The warship was not just dangerous. It was terrifying. And somewhere deep within the alien crew, a quiet dread grew. If this was only one ship, how many more had humanity built? The scanners dug deeper, sliding past the endless weapons and heavy armor, reaching places that seemed hidden on purpose. The alien crew leaned forward, their eyes locked on the flickering screens, their voices hushed as if afraid the ship outside could hear them. At first, the images were unclear, shadows, broken lines, distortions as though the warship itself resisted being studied. Then the data sharpened, revealing chambers vast and silent, chambers that stretched on for kilometers. In these spaces sat machines unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Towers of black metal, spheres humming with faint energy, and conduits glowing with a weak but steady pulse. "What is that?" one officer whispered, his voice shaking. The science officer stared, his mouth dry. "Power sources, but not ordinary. This ship has more than one heart. Even if one fails, another will burn. It was designed never to die." The captain's face hardened as he watched the strange energy readings rise and fall, steady and patient like the breathing of some hidden creature. The ship was not only alive with machinery, it was aware. As the scans probed further, the crew found strange control systems buried deep within the warship's core. They were vast networks, circuits spread like webs across the ship, designed to manage the weapons and power flows. But what unsettled the crew most was this: there was no sign of a command center. No bridge, no single place where living beings gave orders. Instead, the systems seemed to control themselves. The realization hit the crew like a shadow falling over them. This ship could fight even without a captain, even without a crew. It was a weapon that commanded itself. A low murmur of fear passed through the officers. One whispered, "If there were humans here once, they are no longer needed." The science officer's hands trembled over the console. His voice cracked as he spoke. "It's more than that. The patterns, the systems are layered, repeating, adaptive. It learns. Whatever this ship faced before, it changed itself to fight it. It's not just a warship. It's a thinking warship." The captain's chest grew heavy. His mind filled with images of fleets burning, of planets silenced forever. A ship like this needed no army. A single vessel could destroy empires, and worse, it would never stop. The scanners pressed closer, and with each sweep the ship seemed to resist harder. Strange codes flooded their systems, symbols flashing on screens, repeating like warnings. They were not random. They were messages. The crew could not read them, but the rhythm was clear: "You are not welcome here." Then came the signal. A faint pulse, rising from deep within the core. It was not heat, not radiation, not any energy they knew. It was something colder, sharper, alive. A whisper brushing against their minds, though no sound was made. One officer staggered back from his console. "It feels like it's watching us." No one argued. The sensation crept through them all. The bridge grew so quiet they could hear their own breathing. Every face turned toward the colossal shadow outside the viewport, that silent metal beast drifting near the dead star. The captain clenched his jaw, forcing calm into his voice. "Keep scanning. We need to know everything. Even if it kills us." The officers obeyed, though their hands shook. The scanners reached again, deeper, and this time they revealed something buried at the very heart of the warship. A chamber like a throne room, vast and empty except for a single core of burning light. It pulsed in silence, glowing faintly as though asleep. The science officer's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's not a machine. That's something else." The pulse quickened, just slightly, as if responding to the attention. Slow, steady, alive. The crew stared in terror. The silence of the warship no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like waiting. The bridge of the alien vessel was thick with unease. The glow of the consoles lit pale faces, and the silence between the crew pressed harder than the void outside. No one wanted to speak, yet the weight of what they had seen forced words out like cracks in glass. One of the younger officers slammed his hands on the console. "We should leave. This thing is not dead, it's not empty. It's waiting for us. If we stay here any longer, we'll be next." His voice carried fear, raw and sharp. The others turned to the captain, searching for an answer, but his gaze remained locked on the colossal shadow outside the viewport. Another officer shook his head, his voice calmer but trembling at the edges. If we leave without knowing, we bring back nothing but fear. If this ship is real, if more of them exist, our people must know. Imagine this monster waking in the heart of our systems with no warning. The younger one shouted back. And if it wakes now? If it's listening? Do you not feel it? It knows we are here. The science officer's hands shook as he adjusted the scanner controls. He is right about one thing. The readings, they are changing. The pulse in the core, it is stronger now. Not much, but enough. Something reacts to us. A chill spread across the room. The crew exchanged nervous glances, each of them feeling the same dread. The warship was not only resisting their scans, it was aware of them. The captain's voice was steady but heavy. Fear is no excuse to turn blind. Knowledge is survival. If humans built this, then they built others. We cannot run. We must understand. His words silenced the bridge, but it was not agreement. It was fear of disobedience. In their hearts, many of them wanted to flee. Some imagined engines roaring to life, tearing away from the dead star before the beast stirred. But their captain's command kept them frozen in place. The younger officer whispered again, his eyes locked on the screens. This ship was not abandoned. It was left here, like a predator waiting in the dark. The science officer looked up, his face pale. And if it wakes, Captain? What then? The captain did not answer. He kept his eyes on the drifting giant, that endless shape of steel and silence. His silence was answer enough. The crew grew restless. Quiet arguments broke out in hushed tones. Some begged to shut down the scans, to power down all signals, to vanish before the warship's eyes fully opened. Others whispered about the glory of bringing such knowledge home, of proving themselves the first to uncover the secrets of the humans. Fear and ambition clashed in every corner of the room. The air felt heavy, as though the warship itself breathed into their lungs, feeding their terror. The captain finally raised his hand, his voice cutting through the whispers. Enough. We hold our ground. This ship will not break us. If humans built this, then we must know what kind of monsters they were. Or are. But even as he spoke, a quiet shiver passed through him. For the first time, he felt doubt. And outside, the great warship turned slowly, almost lazily, as if adjusting itself in its long sleep. No thrusters fired. No engines burned. Yet the shift was real. The alien crew fell silent at once, every heart pounding in their chests. The warship had moved. The voice lingered in the silence of the bridge, echoing inside their minds long after the comms had gone still. No one dared move, no one dared breathe. The words were simple, yet they carried weight heavier than the stars themselves. You should not have looked inside. The younger officer trembled at his console, his eyes wide. It spoke to us, it knows we are here. The science officer whispered, that was no echo. That was no recording. It answered us. The captain's hands gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white. His voice was low, almost a growl. How could it speak after centuries of silence? There is no crew. No living beings inside. What is controlling it? No one answered. The crew stared at their screens, though the data had turned into chaos, symbols, warnings, pulses of energy that made no sense. The ship was not only jamming their scans, it was sending messages, deliberate and direct. The younger officer's voice broke again, louder now, sharp with panic. We should leave. We should run before it decides to. He stopped, his words choked by sudden fear. The comms crackled again, the static sharp, and once more the voice returned. You were not invited. The bridge grew colder, as though the air itself had frozen. The crew felt the weight of the words pressing down on them, not just through their ears but through their very thoughts. It was more than sound. It was something reaching into them, testing them, peeling away their courage piece by piece. The science officer forced himself to speak, his voice thin and fragile. It's a warning. The ship does not want us here. Another officer whispered back, or it wants us to know we are prey. The captain tried to steady his breathing, but his heart pounded in his chest. He turned toward the viewport, staring at the warship as its lights grew brighter, as though the monster was slowly waking. He could almost feel eyes upon him, ancient and merciless. "What are you?" he asked, not to his crew but to the thing outside. His words were soft, almost broken, carried into the silence like a prayer. The answer came at once, colder than the void. "We are the reminder. We are what waits in the dark." The crew's blood ran cold. Some staggered back from their stations, others clutched at their chests, but none could tear their gaze from the great shadow that now glowed like a rising storm. The younger officer could no longer contain his terror. "It's not a ship, it's a grave. A grave that watches us." The captain's mind raced. A grave, or a guardian. If this was human technology, then it had survived the fall of stars, the death of civilizations. It had survived time itself. And it had not forgotten its purpose. The warship's glow intensified. The alien vessel shook as if caught in a storm, their systems flickering in and out, alarms blaring with warnings they could not silence. Energy signatures surged, flooding every sensor. Weapons. Hundreds of them. Thousands. One by one, they were waking. The voice returned for a final time, steady and merciless. "You should not have come." The bridge fell silent again. No one moved. The only sound was the rising hum of power from the monster outside, a sound that filled the void with a promise of death. The alien crew understood now. They had not discovered an abandoned relic. They had disturbed a sentinel, a weapon left to remind the galaxy of what humans were capable of. And it was no longer sleeping. The hum grew louder, a deep vibration that rattled through the alien vessel's hull and into the bones of the crew. Lights across the human warship blazed brighter, cascading across its titanic frame until it glowed like a star forged from steel. Every weapon port, every cannon mount, every hidden bay flickered with life. The monster was no longer pretending to sleep. It was awake. The alien captain rose slowly from his chair, his face pale in the glow of the failing consoles. He tried to speak, but his words broke before leaving his lips. His crew stared in frozen terror, the reality pressing down on them like the crushing weight of gravity. "This ship, it is looking at us," whispered the science officer. The scanners went dark, dead from the surge of energy outside. Every system inside the alien vessel flickered, their own lights failing as if the warship's presence alone consumed their power. The crew scrambled, shouting warnings, pulling at failing controls, but it was useless. Their ship was no longer their own. Then came the sound. Not a voice, not a warning. It was the thrum of weapons charging, the grinding roar of ancient systems waking from centuries of silence. Cannons lined the warship's hull, their barrels glowing with deadly fire. Missile bays cracked open like jaws unhinging, their payloads pulsing with light. Energy beams hummed with a rising pitch, sharp enough to split the void. The alien crew's fear turned into chaos. Some screamed, others begged to flee, but the engines refused to answer. Their vessel hung powerless before the awakened predator, like prey caught in a web. The captain gripped the railing in front of him, his voice breaking as he gave the order no one wanted to hear. "Prepare for impact." Outside, the warship's weapons aligned. The glow built to a blinding brilliance, until the entire horizon shone with the fury of 1,000 suns. And then, with one terrible moment of silence, the predator struck. Blinding beams ripped across the void, carving through the alien ship as though it were paper. Missiles streaked like falling stars, detonating with force that shook the dead star itself. The alien vessel screamed with metal tearing apart, alarms wailing for a crew that already knew the truth. On the bridge, the crew clung to their stations as fire tore through the hull. The younger officer cried out, his voice lost in the chaos. The science officer's last words were little more than a whisper drowned in thunder. "This is not a ship, it is a warning." The captain's eyes stayed locked on the glowing monster outside, even as the flames closed in around him. He understood now. Humanity had left their mark not with life, but with terror. This was their legacy. The warship's final strike tore the alien vessel apart, scattering it into dust across the void. For a moment, silence returned. The predator floated once more near the dead star, its weapons dimming, its lights fading until only the faint pulse of its core remained. As if nothing had happened. As if it had gone back to sleep. And in the endless dark, the human warship waited again, patient, silent, watching, for the next eyes foolish enough to look inside.